Sabrina Myers from Hot Hospitality Exchange. And today I am talking about a very interesting topic with my co-host, Bogdan Manta from the Essential Workshops. Now, I attended a workshop myself a few weeks ago with Bogdan on how to deliver strong or online powerful presentations. I immediately looked Bogdan up and I signed up to it, and it was such a fantastic 3 hours, very, very well spent. And it gave me a real wake-up moment, or a real inspirational and motivational push in terms of now a lot of event profs have been pushed into the virtual world. We've had to start doing virtual events, webinars, workshops, summits, everything online. And now there are quite a few of us who know how to do that, especially from a tech side. And there's quite a few of us that don't know how to do the tech side. And especially, there's a huge other element of it. How do you manage your presence online personally when you're moderating? So Bogdan is a expert in this area, I would say. And so I thought it would be a wonderful idea for us to get together, and that I would ask him some questions and create a vlog on how storytelling plays a very important role in the world of virtual events. So, Bogdan, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you excited for our journey through storytelling? Yes. So, and this is a good example. What he just did is, we thought we'd make it a little bit fun, and I would be asking questions, and we would put up a sign of yes, no, maybe, especially me, because obviously Bogdan has all the answers. So it's gonna be yes. So the first question that we're going to ask is storytelling important for a virtual event? Now, my answer is yes. Yes. So Bogdan, tell us why storytelling is so important for a virtual event.
Well, because we're talking about attention span, and because we're talking about live events online. And maybe I can explain a little bit the psychology behind it. As human beings, we learn by association. Yeah. And as you are now having a webinar or an event live online, we associate that with a talk show. We associate that with a live show on television, with a live broadcast. Yeah. So as a result, storytelling is fundamentally important, because if you don't have a story, nobody's going to watch it live. So we need to understand that, just your structure and your technical things are totally irrelevant if you don't have the right story, if you don't start in a certain way, if you don't develop on the story, and then, if you don't conclude in a certain way. Miss any of these parts and a lot of other things that come with storytelling, and you miss your opportunity to be memorable online.
Which makes a lot of sense when it comes to, that question of how is it that I can binge watch one series on Netflix for 7 hours, right? And I can't sit, comfortably or engaged through quite a lot of virtual events that I take part in. It's because we're not invested in the story.
It's because we're not invested.
Because there might not even
have a story, we don't have a character development, right? We don't understand that if we are doing a webinar for 2 hours or workshop for 4 hours, you as the facilitator is one of the main characters. At least is the introductory character. And if you don't develop the character properly, like in every story or every book, then we're not interested anymore. So you see, there's so many things which are linked to storytelling, to how you develop a character, to how you bring certain characters, how you bring dialogue, and by that is interaction and engagement. And if we don't understand that, then again, it's just a very mediocre book that people will kind of read, or they will even stop reading, and they will never remember ever again. Or the worst, they'll say, oh, that was a horrible book, I will never recommend it. Absolutely. So I think we need to get this awareness. We really need to understand that.
And so is storytelling related to behavioral science when it comes to relaying a message? Do you think that they play together very well, or that is kind of the basis for it? Yeah, I'm going to go with yes.
Absolutely. And I'm very happy that you asked that, because let's look a little bit into how storytelling is related to the psychology behind how we pay attention and how we focus and so on. And we're going to go into neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters, or the brain chemicals, are very important because those ones will keep the attention span high, and those ones will create an experience. And because of that experience, you will still focus, you will enjoy, and you will stay connected.
Yeah.
And in order to create that experience online, you need to have a different mix of neurotransmitters that have to be developed in your brain, in your participants' brains. And, I don't want to go too much into psychology and behavioral science, and, because behavioral science is also important, how we create certain, how we bring certain situations which will kind of develop a certain behavior, because we want to create behavioral change.
Yeah.
And if you create behavioral change, that's a different level of, so that's a complexity of things. But we're going back to neurotransmitters. One of the most important neurotransmitter when it comes to online, but also offline, is the oxytocin. And that is the bonding neurotransmitter. In short, oxytocin is what kind of makes us connect as human beings. And oxytocin is actually being produced a lot in the pregnant woman, because that's how the pregnant woman will connect with her fetus, via the oxytocin. But oxytocin is also how we establish rapport, is how we connect with each other. Right. And storytelling is what produces a lot of oxytocin in our body. Okay. You don't have the story, you don't have the oxytocin. The way we relate to each other, the way we relate to each other's experiences and past and stories, again, is this oxytocin. Okay. And then, oxytocin is not enough, because if the story is not important, then you're only developing maybe a little bit of oxytocin, but you want to develop also glutamate, for example, which makes the story exciting. You want to develop dopamine, for example, which is the cliffhanger in a story. Yeah. So you see, there are all these specific story elements that make a story great, and that's why stories are great, because we develop different neurotransmitters in our brains. Yeah. Bam, as a result, we remember exactly why that was so exciting. So yes, absolutely.
It's a big resounding yes, absolutely.
It's a big resounding yes. Yeah.
So can you give us some ideas of how event professionals can incorporate storytelling into a virtual event? So picture, event planner who has been organizing a live event their entire lives, from incentives to conferences to meetings, and they work with real people in real environments. And then all of a sudden they're having to deliver a virtual event. What are the tips that they should be keeping in mind in this space, by way of storytelling?
Well, I think the first important thing, and I see this being missed out a lot, is the fact that the preparation has to happen a lot more online than offline. Of course, I mean, we know very well that, the before event part is massive. But when it comes here, the preparation has to happen more from a content and context perspective. Yeah. It's what we call plan, produce, perform. The planning part has a much bigger proportion as time and energy and everything than offline. So basically my first recommendation is take a step back. Start with the why. Why am I doing this? Then with the how. How am I going to create that interaction? And then with the what, and that's your content. Walk away from the content, understand your target audience, understand their demographics, understand if it's morning or evening. If it's morning, it has to be more interactive. If it's evening, it has to be more sending out information. Make sure that you create interaction depending on your culture specifics and where those participants are from. How do they react to interaction? What kind of interaction? Do you do Q&A? Don't do a Q&A at the end. Please stop doing 30 minutes of blah, blah, blah and 50 minutes of Q&A at the end. You know what? Yeah. Passe, it's not 2008. Sorry, it is how it is. Interaction has to happen the whole time. Acknowledge people. Bring people into the conversation. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Create slides. Invite them to do live polling. Raise your hands. Bring papers. Use gamification. Let's not forget that because we are online, it doesn't mean that suddenly the slides have to be digital, the video has to be done now, everything has to be digital. Bring elements. We need to be tactile. 33% of us, right? Event profs equals event props. Yeah. Have your event props, dear event profs. Right? Tactile. Let them hear the sound of the paper. Let them experience, right? I mean, we're focusing so much when we go to live offline conferences, it's microphone, cameras, everything. because we want to focus on the sound and on the video. Well, let's focus on the sound and on the video. It's not only the sound of my voice, it's, you know, touching things, tactile, visual. All these elements create kind of the, you can see I'm very excited about it because I'm very passionate about the subject. Online does not mean that I'm just going to sit here, not move, and not do anything except for that. Bring life to live. Use props, use stuff that are around you, create interaction, ask people to imagine things, ask them to bring props, connect, you know. So
that's a great idea. Ask them to bring something. Yeah, exactly.
of course, because, you know, involve them, right? I mean, tell me, you know, show me, I might forget, tell me and I'll remember. I don't remember the quote exactly. Involve me, and, you know, you need to involve people. We're talking about immersive experiences, and I'm going to be a little bit criticizing here, because one of the things that I see, everyone is so obsessed with having these avatars and immersive. You're not immersing anything. You are so, it is so soulless. The very purpose of making something immersive, it means you need to bring soul to it. Sorry, but making it perfectly from a technical perspective and have no soul to it is not immersive. Sorry to say that. It's just a great technical advance. It's a great technical thing. It will fade away. People will find it once interesting. They will not come back to it. So your avatars and your things, if there's no story and soul and heart and props and humanity and emotions and neurotransmitters behind it, is just a great technological wonder, which people will forget 3 days later. Sorry, I did not invent psychology. I just apply it.
I think those are fantastic tips that we can all definitely learn from and incorporate into a virtual event. And I know one of your favorite quotes is, it's how they made you feel at the end.
It's
right?
Maya Angelou, one of my favorite people in the world. People will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from the events industry, I've been 17 years in the events and production industry, and it's all been about making people feel.
Yes, exactly.
That does not change online. Quite the contrary. It's even more important online. How do you make them feel? Well, storytelling is important. Going back to that.
We have to get them invested in our story, and you have to get them invested in your story. Do you know what not to do during a virtual event?
Let me give you an example because of what not to do.
Okay.
And I love that example. My camera should zoom on me right now. Sometimes it's zooming, sometimes it's not. You know, it's supposed to be for anyway. It will come back to it. So, what not to do is ignore your audience.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. We were invited to join this hospitality training, where there were these three gentlemen talking about the future of engagement in the event world.
Okay.
The future of engagement in the events world.
Right.
These three gentlemen start talking to each other online. There's 200 guests typing things like, your microphone doesn't work, your camera, nobody's facilitating. Those dudes, because that's how I can call them, those dudes are talking to each other like, oh, you're doing a great job, you're doing a great job, like this, talking to each other. And 200 people are there like, hello, 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 is this pre-recorded? Is anyone responding? That is the one thing you should not do. How I always explain it is as follows. You invite 200 of your best friends, business partners, and people you trust to a barbecue.
Yeah.
And when they arrive, you close the door and you don't let them in.
Yeah.
And then you're having barbecue. They can see that you're barbecuing over the fence and they're like, hello, hello, are you going to open the door? We came with gifts. You invited us. And you're sitting there, all three of you, and you're having barbecue. And at the end, they say, well, that went pretty well.
It's true.
So
So pay, I guess in that regard, you mean have someone facilitating, moderating the chat feed, relaying those questions and information to the moderators and the panelists, and making sure that
Yes.
whoever's coming to watch is actually included in this conversation. And it's just not talking to people, but talking with them about it,
Yes.
because if
Yes.
that's the discussion
Yes.
we're having.
You know, as basic needs, as human beings, we have a few basic needs. We all want to be heard.
Mhm.
We all want to be acknowledged. We all want to be told that we did something good, right? Purpose. So first of all, address people by names and take in their questions at all time.
Mhm.
That means that you hear them by repeating their questions and so on, and by taking their questions into consideration, and you also acknowledge them. Thank you so much, Peter, for that question. Such a good question. Thank you so much. Now let's answer the question, or let's park it for later on. People are terrified of taking questions and they want to leave them at the end. How do you acknowledge your participants? How do you engage them? And you then call yourself an immersive experience?
Mm. Exactly. I guess it's not about coming up with a fancy title if you're not going to follow it through, So, and look, there is a space and there is a place for such webinars. If you're going to make how to dissect a frog type of webinar, that's very academic. You can keep it academic. You can try to make it fun, but maybe the audience that you're doing it for isn't really interested in that. Then you can keep it to what it is. But if you're going to create a workshop or a talk about something like engagement and the persuasion of something, then you have to actually take those words seriously and use them in your actual virtual event.
Also, you know what it is? A lot of people call it a workshop.
Yeah.
A workshop
Mm.
means that you have people who are involved and invested, and there's practical examples, and there's constant work. People work together, people work separate, there's exercises, there's Q&As. That is what a workshop means. Training means the same thing. Training online means you split people into different groups in rooms, you give them exercises, you create experiential learning methods, The only thing which is kind of sending out information is a webinar.
Yeah.
And by webinar, people kind of expect that they go there, they listen to the person, maybe they ask some questions, and that's it. But guess what? Since we started with this coronavirus, very few people call their things a webinar. They called it workshop, they called it training. Great, but you're still not letting people touch your barbecue.
No. That's actually a really, really good point. So
Yeah.
So you've brought up some fantastic tips and tools of what we can do. Is there anything else in terms of using storytelling in virtual events that, we'd like to touch upon?
Yeah, I mean, with storytelling, Sabrina, we can talk about storytelling for weeks and months, and because, there's different type of stories. How do you develop the story? How do you build it? There's different ways how you structure a story.
Yeah.
And, it's so relative on the number of participants, the content, the context, how we create engagement, interaction, how we develop characters, how we split the audience. It's so diverse. And if there's one thing that I could recommend is a story is never exactly the same as another story.
Yeah.
Which means even if you say the same story over and over again, as a narrator, I don't know how you pronounce that. You're always supposed to tell the story in a different way.
Yeah.
So allow yourself to reinvent yourself, allow yourself to try new things, allow yourself to learn new things. Sometimes you're going to try something, it's not going to work. It's not failing. It's only failing if you didn't learn from it. Try different methods, try different times, try different tools. Don't limit yourself to only one tool.
Yeah.
We're organizing the webinar, and you know very well, we're switching from one program into another like this. And people are like, oh, wow. I'm always saying, don't limit your content and your context and your story to the program. Make sure you use different programs that will allow you to develop your story and everything that you want to talk about, and to elevate your participants and to immerse your participants into the story and the concept and the content and the experience. Don't let technology tell you what you're supposed to do. Find ways to make technology work for you, because this is the reason technology has been invented. Make technology work for you.
Absolutely.
It always does.
Absolutely. Put people before tech, because it's about how you're going to have to reach your audience using the best tech, but then kind of try to make sure you are doing that, and you're not just saying, oh, I've got the most amazing platform and we're going to do this and this and this, and then it still ends up being a regular old webinar. So yeah.
Events have been, are, and will always be about bringing people together, connecting people, creating a sense of community, sharing knowledge, learning from each other, sharing that knowledge, motivating each other, and so on. Why should events online be a different thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bogdan, for that. Those have been some fantastic tips on maneuvering as an event professional, this world of virtual events using storytelling and behavioral science applied to how we do what we do.
Just, the wonderful thing, if I can add one thing, Sabrina, and thank you so much for having me. We're all in this industry because we love to make people experience things. We love to make people feel better. We love to be hospitable. That's why it's called hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, it's all about being hospitable.
Yeah.
Do your absolute best to focus on that. And then technology will only be a very small little part, which, by the way, will support that hospitality, will not take over. So.
Absolutely. Now, thank you so much again, and those of you who have been inspired and you've loved everything that you've heard here today. Obviously, we'd love your feedback, so drop it in the comments below. If you want to get in touch with any of us, our information is also in the post, and I highly recommend, if you want to get better at presenting or anything to do with the online world and presentation and learning about behavioral science, then contact Bogdan and see what is there to be learned at the essential workshops. I'm Sabrina Myers, Hot Hospitality Exchange. Thank you all for your time. Hope you enjoyed this vlog, and continue to tell your story. Me too. Yeah.